conference is a very important one to talk about our efforts to recognize and celebrate the late Colonel Young-Oh Kim, an American hero who deserves to be recognized with a U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, I knew Colonel Kim, for many years because he was in Los Angeles, so of course I encountered him many times. And he was a very, very modest person, and it wasn't until I read his history that I realized what an incredible background he had. He was a true patriot. Born in 1919 in Los Angeles to immigrant parents, he joined the U.S. Army and bravely served in World War II as the only Korean American in the famous Japanese American 100th Battalion 442nd Regimental Combat Team. When asked if he wanted to transfer to a different unit, he responded, "There is no Japanese nor Korean here. We are all Americans and we are fighting for the same cause." During the Korean War, he re-enlisted in the U.S. Army to fight on the front lines, and that's despite during World War II having been in the most dangerous situations of all time. Instead of just retiring, he re-enlists. And in fact, he was the first minority officer in U.S. history to command an Army battalion on the battlefield. After he retired from military service, Colonel Kim returned to Southern California, where he worked to uplift traditionally underserved communities and helped to found a number of Asian American organizations and institutions, including the Koreatown Youth and Community Center, as well as the Korean American Museum and the Japanese American National Museum. Throughout his lifetime of service, he truly embodied what it meant to advance the common good. So, as we celebrate Asian Pacific Heritage Month in May, we in CAPAC, along with our allies in the Council for Korean Americans, call on President Obama to recognize Colonel Kim with the 2016 Presidential Medal of Freedom for his dedicated service to our nation. If selected, he will be the first Korean American in history to receive this honor. And we're hopeful that the President will do the right thing and posthumously recognize Colonel Kim as the American hero that he is. And so now I'd like to introduce Congressmember Charlie Rangel.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. You know, when the President of the United States gives the Medal of Freedom, it's not just the recipient that is the honoree, it is the United States of America, trying to highlight how beautiful this country is and how Americans come in so many different colors, so many different backgrounds. World War II was the war that was supposed to end all wars. And to think that a young man, under the racist discrimination that we had during that period of time, would volunteer to serve, especially with a Japanese American unit, that is courageous enough to be able to withstand what is necessary when you're in the armed forces and you in barracks with people of entirely different backgrounds. The courage that he showed in Europe has been adequately shown by the decorations that he received in combat. What amazes me, however, is that after being discharged and going into civilian life, having earned the honors as being a combat veteran, and being able to be successful in a civilian business, that when he saw the North Koreans invade South Koreans, what makes America so great is that you can be a great American and never forget the heritage of your grandparents' country. It's one thing to sell bonds, it's another thing to support, but the ultimate for a combat veteran is to volunteer to serve his country for a cause that involved the United States and the Asian region. He had so many opportunities to serve in intelligence, but being a combat veteran, he knew his attributes, he knew how to best serve the military, and he served well. He epitomizes what most military people would hope to be able to leave the armed services with. It's one thing to be caught up in combat as I was. I did not volunteer to go into combat. And I cannot think of a situation where I would be volunteering again. But this young man, this colonel, decided to re-enlist in the military. And so I hope the president will take into consideration that this is not a Korean American, Asian American award. This is an award for an American who fought for this great country and should be a symbol for all Americans, no matter where their great-grandparents come from, to remember that it's America first, and he's proven it. Hope the president supports this effort. Thank you, Judy.
And now, Congressmember Maxine Waters.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, let me thank the press for being here for this very important press conference. We are asking everyone to support the President Award, the Medal of Freedom, to the late Colonel Young Ok Kim. Today, you're going to hear a lot about this courageous colonel who made tremendous sacrifices and who provided tremendous leadership in bringing people together and recognizing that we're all Americans. And so, as you're hearing about him today, I want you to know that I have in my district many Koreans, many non-Korean Americans, and they're throughout our nation. And Colonel Young Kim Ok wasn't just an American war hero, he was a civic leader and humanitarian as well. He fought for peace abroad and he fought for peace at home. Colonel Kim did not let rejection and discrimination define him. After serving in World War II and the Korean War, he spent the rest of his life as an advocate for equality, youth, the elderly, and poor in Los Angeles, regardless of their ethnic background. His work left a legacy, certainly in my district in Los Angeles. In fact, one of the nonprofit organizations he helped to build up in the 80s, CAPAC, Senior Healthcare, still to this day offers culturally sensitive care to Japanese American elderly. Late last year, CAPAC transitioned into new management, and both Judy and I have been fighting to ensure the affordable cultural care is continued and that the legacy of Colonel Kim's work continues for generations to come. And so, I join with my colleagues in calling on the President to award the late Colonel Kim with the Medal of Freedom for serving abroad when our nation needed him and for serving at home to our underserved communities. He certainly is a hero and champion to Los Angeles, our country, and the world for the lives he saved and for his leadership, passion, and vision which he served others. And because Judy shared with us just a moment ago, and I think this is remarkable, he will be the first Korean to receive this medal. And I suppose at a time when we're finally talking about inclusion and diversity, that this is more important than we even know, that he sends a message out there to Koreans and others that if you make sacrifices and you stand up for this country and you do this kind of work, you deserve to be honored. You deserve to be recognized. And so I'm very pleased to join with Judy and my colleagues today to say to the President, you got to do this.
Thank you, Congressmember Waters. And now, Congressmember Mark Takano.
Thank you, Judy. Today I joined my colleagues in calling on the White House to award young Oak Kim the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Throughout his distinguished military service, Colonel Kim fought for this country while also fighting racial discrimination. Not only did he break through enemy lines, he broke barriers for Asian Americans during a time of intense anti-Asian sentiment. I would not be here today as a member of Congress. In fact, many of us would not be here today if it wasn't for young Oak Kim. As the first person of color to command an Army battalion, Kim demonstrated that our bravery and our patriotism are not defined by the color of our skin. But I want to deepen this point a little more, because I'm a Japanese American member of Congress. He bridged a divide between two ethnic groups, ethnic Asian groups in America, Japanese Americans and Korean Americans. Of course, Japanese Americans during the time of war, the World War II, their patriotism and Americanism was questioned. Colonel Kim refused to be reassigned from the 100th Battalion on the assumption that Korean and Japanese Americans could not get along. He told his commanding officer, "They're Americans, I'm American, and we're going to fight for America." You have to understand that the 442nd among Japanese Americans is a highly revered fighting unit. They were for the fighting unit of its size, they'd suffered some of the greatest casualties ever. And among the most highly decorated units. But many people don't know that one of the commanding officers was a Korean American. And this is very significant because Colonel Kim provides a unifying figure for both Japanese Americans and Korean Americans. And that was why it was so important for me to be here today to strongly advocate that young Oak Kim be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, because he represents not just breaking the barriers. I literally would not be here today. General Shinseki told me in his office, when another member of Congress, my delegation, didn't understand what the painting of the lost battalion, the 442nd rescued a lost battalion of Texans. And he explained this to my colleague, the story of the 442nd. And he turned to me and said, "You, Congressman, would not be a member of Congress today if it wasn't for this fighting unit. It was a shame we had to prove our loyalty while people were being interned, but this unit was also being led by young Oak Kim, and I'm personally indebted to his contribution to Japanese Americans, but also to American history." The 100th Battalion was eventually integrated into the 442nd Regiment, mostly Japanese American unit, whose valor and courage forever changed the nation's perceptions of Japanese Americans, and I would say all Asian Americans. In my own district, you'll find the Young Oak Kim Center for Korean American Studies at the University of California, Riverside, which I represent. I'm so proud to represent that center. And for many Americans, his story and his influence are unknown. In fact, his motto was, quote, "Do all the groundwork, but let others take the credit for it," end quote. He would not survive as a member of Congress, I'm telling you that right now. It is time for young Oak Kim to get the credit he deserves. I call on President Obama to award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And thank you so much. I'm so glad I got to be here today and be a part of this historic press conference.
Well done.
And now we have somebody who will speak about how her life has been personally touched by Colonel Kim. And that is the former acting assistant attorney general for the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice, and that's Grace Chang Becker.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Chu and leaders of CAPAC. Thank you so much for inviting me to share in this very historic day. You know, I had the great honor of working with Colonel Young Oak Kim over 15 years ago when I was a special advisor to the Army. Colonel Kim was part of a panel of experts that was providing advice to the Army on its investigation of alleged civilian killings at No Gun Reed during the Korean War. I remember Colonel Kim very well. He was over 80 years young, And he was someone that really impressed his peers, you know, even though he was relatively short in stature and very, very humble. Perhaps the respect that he garnered is best explained by this one simple fact. When the experts got together, and these are retired generals, former ambassadors, professors with tremendous knowledge of the Korean War and US-ROC relations, they all referred to each other by their first names. But Colonel Young-Oh Kim was always addressed as Colonel Kim, even among those who outranked him. Now, beyond his military accomplishments, Colonel Kim's leadership in helping minorities, youth, and the poor in California and throughout the nation is really an example to all Americans. Personally, Colonel Kim's life of service is a continuing source of inspiration for me. And as Judy said, I had no idea at the time that I was at the Pentagon that he had accomplished so much in his lifetime. So I am especially grateful that through the nomination of Colonel Kim for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, we will be sharing his extraordinary life with all of our communities and with the American public. Thank you so much.